Yes, Sidney. You sound happy, Sidney. Why should you be happy when I'm not?
Because, JJ, we have another episode of the Top 10 Favorite, and from what I believe are the best performances by some of the greatest actors in all of cinema.
Sin, sin, sin. You're all sinners.
Yes, you cookies full of arsenic. I'm starting from 10 and then doing some tumbling, as well as making out on the beach with the waves washing all over us, all the way up to number 1.
Nobody's gonna do nothing. Anybody does any killing around here, I'll do it.
Always remember, I have seen every film attainable of every artist I cover here. God, it takes forever, but it's totally worth it. Every list is succinct and dynamic, delectable, delovely, and definitive accuracy.
I'll listen for one more minute.
Get ready, classic film lovers, for today we are talking about one of cinema's great box office draws, one of cinema's most alluring, attractive, and yet artistically arresting leading men in the industry. The man with the killer smile and killer artistic vision, Burt Lancaster. Burt Stephen Lancaster is the name, born and raised in East Harlem, New York City, of English and Irish heritage. Like a normal kid growing up in New York, always active, in fact way more than usual, growing a big-time love for sports, basketball specifically, where he received a scholarship from NYU. But before he could graduate high school, his mother died. Distraught, he dropped out of NYU and basically ran away to join the circus. Literally joining the Cade Brothers Circus Act with his longtime friend and acting partner, Nick Cravat. There growing in his immaculate strength as an all-star athlete and acrobat. When World War II called, he joined the Army in 1943 and performed in a lot of the USO shows. Being a performer, the actual Broadway stage was certainly wanting him for the show A Sound of Hunting, which attracted the attention of agent Harold Hecht, who urged Burt to really step into the limelight as an actor, when Burt didn't really care for that. From one connection to the other, Burt meets big-time producer Halby Wallace, who initially signs Burt on with an 8-movie contract. And what's Burt's first released film that he actually headlines? Robert Siodmak's The Killers. Burt's first movie at 33 years old, being one of the greatest film noirs ever made. Now, how is that for a promising career up ahead? So promising that after a run of great films, Burt would use his damn creative mind to form his own production company with Hecht, initially called Norma Productions, after Burt's second wife, later changing the name to Hecht Lancaster Productions, where they would produce a great number of great films, but most notably, a little-known picture called Marty, winning 4 Oscars, including Best Picture, thus becoming one of the most successful independent production companies in Hollywood at the time, producing a few more of Burt's own works he would star in, and then finally becoming Hecht Hill Lancaster Productions. That's one of the greatest and admirable things about Burt Lancaster. The actor with handsome, leading man looks, incredible masculinity, but masterful diction, and an elegant level of artistry that most audiences today may not remember or even know about. Burt Lancaster has always been known as one of the greatest movie stars of all time. But key thing, not just a movie star, a real actor through and through. Remember, we only cover feature films on here, my friends, so TV appearances and miniseries are out of the qualifying guidelines. However, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up briefly his powerful performances in the 1990 miniseries of The Phantom of the Opera, where he received a Golden Globe nomination, and his last appearance ever on the 1991 miniseries Separate but Equal, both equally moving. The man had so many gigantically mesmerizing performances on film that I could easily do a top 20, but
Cat's in a bag and a bag's in a river.
That's right, Sydney. It's done. But as hard as it was, it's sure as hell fun paying respect to one of Hollywood's most popular male stars that challenged everyone around him, that, quote, made everyone hate him on set, but by the end of filming, they fell back in love with him. And how couldn't you love an artist of his creativity, of his stature, and energy that he is listed on AFI's list of 25 greatest male stars of all time, ranked at number 19, and for many considered to be their favorite actor of all time.
Match me, Sidney.
And let's take a bite out of the top 10 best performances of one of cinema's all-time greats, nicknamed Mr. Muscles and Teeth, the passionate tough guy with brilliance, also nicknamed as Cinema Magic, Burt Lancaster. Let's start off at number 10 being The Train.
To hell with London. We started this whole thing for one reason, to stop the train, because the Allies were going to be here. Well, where are they? Every day they've been due. And every day a man has been killed for thinking they were just over the next hill. I say to hell with it. Now they want us to paint the train? Let them blow it up!
Shocker. I get it. We know a lot of fans that rate The Train as a film as one of the greatest ever made. And once again, I go by performance rather than film itself because it's possible to have a phenomenal performance in a mediocre film. That being said, The Train is absolutely not a mediocre film, but a gripping killer of a steam engine expertly shot by John Frankenheimer, who would become one of Burt's great and a little agitating collaborators, agitating for how much they would lightly clash on set with direction. Burt being the instigator of his own certain vision, going as far as firing the original director, Arthur Penn, to make it more of an action film to make money. Frankenheimer will do what I say, says Burt to the producers, and away they went, creating damn great action sequences, with Burt at 50 years old doing his own stunts in the film. Notably, that one tracking shot of stunts that is all Burt. Incredible work. I mean, when you have to stop a train controlled by Nazis, taking all the prized French artwork, you will stop at nothing to create victory. And Burt, ever the relentless, amazing with just movement and little dialogue here, could certainly achieve that. As demanding as Burt could be, especially during filming, Burt flew out to Washington, D.C. to be a heavy supporter for the Civil Rights March on August 28th, 1963, to then get right back to filming. That's a true honorary man right there. Number 9, Trapeze. This hits just a little thunderously close to home for Burt as Ribble, a once show-stopping all-time great circus acrobat, sounds familiar, who is sadly crippled from a triple somersault fall. And he's not himself anymore. Can he even go on in the business? But when a young, ambitious acrobat, Tony Curtis, wants Burt to train him, he takes on the job, as well as adding Gina Lollobrigida to the mix. And we got a triple love triangle somersault going on here. Tensions were high again behind the scenes, with Burt ever so adamant on getting things right. Having been the amazingly skilled acrobat himself, he did majority of his own stunts. The chemistry between Burt and Tony is really electric. So electric, it's sad that the gay subtext from the novel it's based on was taken out. However, being the intelligent stars that they were, you still see it just luring underneath the whole time. Burt does give it his all, making it an entertaining piece with vulnerable touchstones of Burt's own life as a phenomenal athlete.
For your own sake, Lola, get out. One night these hands won't be there to catch you.
Number 8, Come Back Little Sheba.
We gotta keep living, don't we? I can't give up just because I made a few mistakes. I gotta keep going.
Yes, of course. A shocking placement, perhaps, considering how beloved this film is, especially by my own dear mother. With Burt Lancaster in, honestly, one of his most acclaimed yet loudly miscast roles of his career, according to most critics and audiences. However, when it came to the opportunity of bringing William Inge's powerful Broadway hit to screen, Burt knew he had to stretch himself as an actor, which was always on the forefront of his creative mind. In the first film I ever remember seeing him in when I was a kid, folks, he plays Doc, a recovering alcoholic who lives in such quiet desperation after the long loss of his child, with his overly buttery and endearing wife, Lola, played masterfully by Shirley Booth in her Oscar-winning performance reprising the same role she originated on Broadway, which earned her the Tony as well. When Lola puts up one of their rooms in the house for rent, a young college girl named Marie, played by Terry Moore in an Oscar-nominated performance as well, comes to take the room, enlightening Doc by her youth and virtuousness. But it turns out maybe she's not so perfect as he thought, causing Doc to slip away even more into the darkness. Yes, folks, we all know this role of Doc calls for a middle-aged actor, someone who shows weaker stature and physicality, a beaten and broken man, maybe. The great Sidney Blackmer would have done just as well reprising it, which earned him the Tony as well, not to mention Spencer Tracy, Dean Jagger, and even Bogey were all sought after to play the role, and Bogey specifically wanted to do it. But Burt was already a contract player with Paramount Pictures, so Burt said he would do whatever it took to bring this poor old soul to hopeful life. This was and is a performance to look at the paramount shift of artistry for Burt, who spends a lot of the film underplaying, but Burt recognized how much of a Shirley Booth show the film really is, and it really belongs to Shirley, which gives Burt that hard task to react a lot off of Shirley. And you can feel the pain. You feel the inner turmoil he is facing of living through what he believes were massive mistakes. There are so many moments of silence that are so beautiful that when it comes to their final scene together, Shirley and Burt, it breaks and heals your heart in just a matter of minutes.
Did they treat you all right?
Honey, don't ever leave me. Please don't ever leave me. I don't know what I did or what I said. I can hardly remember anything. But please forgive me, please. I'll try to make everything up.
Though Burt's performance may not be so massively loved, it certainly was a valuable lesson for Burt in growing as an actor. Number 7, The Leopard. Now, to most film scholars, this might be too low, considering the true beauty and significance of this Italian classic from 1963 that features Burt in one of his own personal favorite performances as Don Fabrizio Cobera, Prince of Salina, the leopard himself, set during 1860s Sicily, where the prince's aristocracy is declining, but refuses to build a new Sicily as the poor could rise and take over for the next generation. Burt lobbied heavily for this role because of how much he loved the novel, and the script was very faithful, argued as the most faithful and tasteful screenplay of any novel published. But it certainly was against the director's choice in casting an American like Burt. However, Burt was still box office draw, so in he went, on location in Italy and Sicily, causing more rifts with the director because of his begrudging casting choice, until Burt, in his Burtish way, confronted the issue out loud with such aggression, showing his passion for the role, the story, knowing it backwards and forwards with nothing but sincere creativity, thus earning the respect of director Visconti, and creating for many filmmakers, including Martin Scorsese, one of the greatest films ever made, also becoming a flop in America. We are very grateful to have the original 3-hour Italian cut on Criterion because it showcases Burt living in a man who is on the destructive path of lost identity within himself. And it's this example that when Burt cannot showcase acting and just be, just simplify, God, is it powerfully mesmerizing. Number 6, Birdman of Alcatraz.
You know, I think I've got you figured out, Shoemaker. First day I came here, you as much as asked me to get down on my knees and whip her. I wouldn't do it then, I won't do it now. I won't lick your hand, and that's what eats you, ain't it, Keeper? Well, you keep this in mind. A man ain't whipped until he quits, and I'll never give you that pleasure.
Okay, now this is interesting, folks. This beloved film and performance by Burt in the title role by audiences and critics alike is surely deserved of its acclaim, though it personally conflicts me as an artist, as well as an audience member. For if you know the true story that this film is based on, you know how deeply puzzling the final product is. That true story being on convicted murderer Robert Stroud, who had been incarcerated for 54 years total, majority of his life in a couple prisons, but he finds refuge and salvation in the care and feeding of various birds all throughout his imprisonment. The story on Robert Stroud is indeed very fascinating. So yes, spoilers ahead, but if you've seen it, why not have more truth in how truly violent Stroud was in prison, going on record as being one of the most intimidating and frightening prisoners, which explains why he was never granted parole. His demeanor only softened for the last couple years of his life in prison until his death. So why not show more of that aggression in the beginning that Burt Lancaster could absolutely embody? That way his redemption is the more powerful. Clearly, I have thoughts about the film itself, which we all know the answers to, on why United Artists and Burt changed it the way they did. However, the main focus, of course, is on Burt's performance, regardless of how incorrect it may feel, for the sake of the story itself that Burt wanted to tell. It still packs an endearing punch. Burt brought back on his Frankenheimer to take over directing after Burt fired director Charles Crichton due to creative differences, and it marks a beautiful piece of teamwork, again, with performance and shot sequences. Burt dedicated 8 months of his life to the performance of Robert Stroud, missing out on other opportunities. But Burt pressed on, growing in such admiration for the character of Robert Stroud, how he dedicated himself to the health and betterment of birds, to them believing Stroud should have been pardoned, which evidently never happened. Being the last film produced by Burt's company, Hecht Hill Lancaster Productions, with United Artists buying them out completely, Burt gives such a humanistic performance that earned him his 3rd Academy Award nomination for Best Actor. And for some, it is their favorite performance from Burt.
What's wrong with dying? Because life's too precious a gift. That's why. Because the first duty of life is to live.
Number 5, The Swimmer.
Nothing's turned out the way I thought it would. When I was a kid, I used to believe in things.
For most cinephiles, this is either way too low or even way too high, but it is absolutely necessary to be at least at number 5, if not higher, folks. For Burt's powerful performance is something of an elegant novelty, based on the short story published in The New Yorker by John Cheever. Yes, it is the hugely allegorical exploration of a man named Ned, Burt, who has this inspiring idea to swim his way home.
This is the day Ned Merrill swims across the county.
Hopping from pool to pool, total of 10 pools throughout the narrative, and along the way we learn about who he is, what he's after, and what is he trying to cling to, or what kind of redemption can he swim for? A 1960s parable also perfectly described by Burt himself as Death of a Salesman in Swimming Trunks. And that's very much it. Because without spoiling it for you, Burt is very much trying to salvage what he can of the masculine American dream, learning how broken it really is. Being released in 1968, my God, does it really feel like the end of an era and the beginning of a new one, with the all surreal and psychedelic fantastical shots, courtesy of director Frank Perry, who directed majority of the film, but was later replaced by the amazing actress-director Sidney Pollack. Why was Perry let go? Remember, we're talking about Burt again, so creative differences were certainly visible, receiving mixed reviews. But now, of course, the film has a great strong cult following, and a lot of that is really thanks to Burt for leading the cause, using his own money to pay for the last day of shooting when the budget was all used up, really championing himself for training endlessly with Olympic swimmer Robert Horn to combat Burt's own fear of water. He swam day and night, did whatever it took to stay in shape, for like I said, the man is shirtless for the whole damn film, even with a little courtesy crack popping up in there. But it is very symbolic for Burt. What started out as a film that most would loathe on its initial viewing will grow into pure admiration, respect, and love for the film. I promise you that, which I donate all my mad respect to Burt for making it passionately powerful. It's no wonder how even Burt considered his performance most likely his favorite performance he's ever given.
You loved it. You loved it. We both loved it.
Number 4, From Here to Eternity.
I never knew it could be like this. Nobody ever kissed me the way you do.
Nobody?
No, nobody.
How shameful. I know that this isn't much higher. I know, folks. Because if you don't know already, especially spoken on the Frank Sinatra and Deborah Carr top 10 videos, this is one of my dear favorite films ever, led by Burt in his first ever Academy Award nominated performance for Best Actor as First Sergeant Milton Warden, a high-ranking sergeant with the Army Regiment on the Paradise Land of Oahu, Hawaii. His character is one of a couple of vocal points in this romantic soap opera war story, mainly focusing on his dilemma of either transferring as an officer out of Oahu, running away with his superior officer's wife, whom he has deeply fallen in love with, Karen, played amazingly by Oscar-nominated Deborah Carr, or stay married to his one consistent love, the Army. Like his brilliant fellow Oscar-nominated co-star, Monty Clift, Burt threw himself and obsessed over his role, again, nitpicking every little thing about his character and actions that drove Oscar-winning director Fred Zinnemann insane, telling him to go screw himself, basically. I mean, that certainly helped Burt, especially with being scared to death working with Monty, because he, like every other aspiring actor, idolized Clift. Their very first scene together, Burt was shaking even, and I have to say, every scene they have together really does cook, partially because Monty made every one of his scene partners 10 times better and naturally real. One of the great and sexiest makeout sequences with Deborah on the beach, the waves washing over their sins, so to speak. Burt and Deborah's chemistry is very electric. I mean, isn't it obvious that the two were really romantically involved while filming? That's the Big 10-4.
Karen, I'm no officer. I'm an enlisted man. I can't be anything else. If I tried to be an officer, I'd be putting on an act. I just can't do it. Please don't ask me why.
It is one of the great performances from Burt that brought him to the real forefront of a leading man with heart and ability, filled with masculinity and courage. And to this day, it remains one of my personal favorite films, thanks to everything and everyone involved, but of course, the nuance and strength of Burt.
Drop that knife. Okay, fatso. If it's killing you want, come on.
Number 3, Atlantic City.
A room for me and my mother.
In all of cinema, it's one of the most endearing and saddeningly misbegotten, led by Burt's utter fearlessness in a fearful role of faded ex-gangster Lou, who gets caught up in a web of drugs, theft, and soon, murder, after meeting Sally, played wonderfully by Susan Sarandon, whom Lou pines for throughout their whole little on-the-run operation in Atlantic City. Directed by the brilliant Louis Malle, this was a quiet, masterful work from the indie genius that true fans will always remember, not just for Malle's thorough direction, but for the fiery chemistry between Sarandon and Lancaster. These two, do they work off each other exquisitely? It's easy to understand how Burt would grow in an attraction for Susan with every sequence of her cleansing herself with the lemons, so much to have Burt recite its beauty to us like a poem.
What do you do when you watch me?
I look at you. You take off your blouse, then you run the water. Then you take a bottle of gold perfume and you put it on the sink. Then you slice the lemons. You open a box of blue soap. You run your hands under the water to feel the temperature.
This is Burt at his humble age of 66, where he wasn't necessarily top box office draw, nor was he top-fitted action-packed leading man anymore, giving us, in the character of Lou, a sense of passionate reincarnation when his eyes lay on Sally, and embarking on a resurrection for himself in action, yet always keeping his dignity. That's a powerful characteristic that Burt certainly gave Lou. Dignity, yet inadequacy, like the tremendous moment when Sally is being beaten by the mobsters, and it just shows Burt doing nothing. The failure on his face said it all, which then delights our spirit when, spoiler, he can finally protect her when he busts out the gun Atlantic City was a critical hit in its release of 1980, but pushed to 81 for awards consideration, receiving the big 5 Oscar nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actress for Susan, and Burt's 4th and final Academy Award nomination for Best Actor.
Tell those hoods to leave the women alone. What they're looking for, I got.
Number 2, Sweet Smell of Success.
Why is it that everything you say sounds like a threat?
Maybe it's a mannerism, because I don't threaten friends. But why furnish your enemies with ammunition? You're a family man, Harvey, and someday, God willing, you may want to be president. And here you are, out in the open, where any hep person knows that this one is toting that one around for you.
Damn. How brilliant and perfect. Burt Lancaster's vicious tour de force of a performance is as acid-tongued J.J. Hunsaker. Just that name, J.J. Hunsaker, the most powerful and diabolically cynical newspaper columnist in New York City, who wants his sister to break up her engagement with probably the whitest and most square jazz musician ever. So he appoints Sidney Falco, played just as brilliantly by Tony Curtis, an unscrupulous press agent who's gonna go out on a limb to break up the relationship. Based on the novelette by Ernest Lehman, we feature some of the greatest and most quotable dialogue in cinema.
If you're funny, James, I'm a pretzel. Drop dead.
Son, I don't relish shooting mosquitoes with elephant guns. Suppose you just shuffle along and call it a day.
That dialogue wouldn't have the bite that it has without the brilliance of Burt just dominating the role with quiet menace and gusto and even an undertone of queerness to it.
I'd hate to take a bite out of you. You're a cookie full of arsenic.
Such a world of difference of a role for Burt at the time that many still felt he was completely wrong for, given to the fact that Hunsaker was based on real-life columnist Walter Winchell, and it was originally slated for Hume Cronin and even Orson Welles, which would have been brilliant either way, I'm not gonna lie. But being the major film produced by Burt's Hecht Hill Lancaster Productions, they figured Burt would bring in the audience. The appeal of it all, of this catastrophic satire on the deep-seated underbelly of journalism. And famously, it would be a gigantic flop, audiences being so appalled at Lancaster's performance and for doing such a tough, cynical film. My goodness. It's certainly not family Sunday viewing at the movies, that's for sure. And it caused Hecht Hill Lancaster to really rethink their strategy of filmmaking after taking such a threatening loss of $400,000. With its hard-edged themes of every man for himself, it goes to show how ahead of its time it really was. Now unanimously praised at every critic circle list as one of the greatest films ever made, entered into the National Film Registry for its cultural significance, and it should have earned Burt his second Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, in my opinion. But that's the Oscars, isn't it? As was clearly displayed at the 1958 Oscars with Burt and his BFF, Kirk Douglas, with that ridiculous and hysterical song.
It's great not to be nominated, great not to be nominated, great merely to sit here and relax.
That's perfect. But at least Burt's performance as Hunsaker is rated at number 76 on Premiere Magazine's 100 Greatest Movie Performances of All Time.
I love this dirty town.
And it loves you, Burt. Now, my friends, here are just some honorable mentions for you. Field of Dreams. Yeah, folks, I can't help it. Doc Moonlight Graham is always too precious to me, not only because he's based on the real-life Archibald Moonlight Graham, who played literally one major league game for the New York Giants in the early 1900s, but because it would be Burt's last appearance in a cinematic film, and how touching he is as the ball player with a dream, but an even bigger heart. Vera Cruz. It's gotta be an honorable mention, for it features again one confirmed screen legend, Gary Cooper, facing off against a soon-to-be screen legend, Burt Lancaster, in a notable anti-hero role as Joe Aaron. Burt is just on fire here that Clark Gable, friend of Cooper's, told Cooper not to take the role of Ben, believing Burt would, quote, blow Cooper off the screen. And in essence, Burt does succeed, because as a bankable movie star on the rise, not yet sealed, it was risky to play villains, because how could the studio label you? They couldn't with Burt in this case. Directed by Robert Aldrich, shot on location, this is certainly one of the most underrated westerns ever, and was often cited as the prototype and influence for the spaghetti westerns that were soon to come. Being another one of Heck Lancaster's films, Burt wasn't going to let this one go by without a bang. 7 Days in May. Wow, a timely political thriller that totally speaks to today, wouldn't you say? As much as it did when it was first released in 1964, re-teaming with director Frankenheimer again, and film number 5 out of 7 total between good friends Burt and Kirk Douglas. I'd have to say this is most likely their best film together, Burt and Kirk, even though they worked wonderfully with each other in other films like Gunfight at OK Corral and Tough Guys. Absolutely. But when you have a powerful story like this, Burt on the edge of his nerves, literally unsure of himself if he could play such an ambiguously villainous role, which was apparently going to be played by Douglas initially, but Douglas urged his buddy to take it on because Douglas knew Burt's strengths.
I know you think I'm a weak sister, General. But when it comes to my oath of office, defending the Constitution of the
Nobody
United
has to
States...
teach me how to salute a flag.
Somebody has to teach you about the democratic processes that flag represents.
But don't you presume to take on that job, Mr. President. Because frankly, you're not qualified.
Judgment at Nuremberg. God, one of the greatest courtroom dramas and films of all time, period, with Burt Lancaster's performance as Dr. Ernst Janning. His character was based on the highest-ranking defendant in the trial, Franz Schlegelberger, who is one of the biggest Nazi and Hitler sympathizers. Once again, with his minimal dialogue, it gave Burt the opportunity to give and share so much with just the power of his eyes. But when we see his mighty monologue on the stand, yeah, he's guilty as hell, but he's going down with gusto.
There was fear. Fear of today. Fear of tomorrow. Fear of our neighbors. And fear of ourselves. Only when you understand that, can you understand what Hitler meant to us.
Local hero. Oh, aye, this classic was this close in the top 10. You bet, featuring Burt in the scene-stealing performance as Happer, owner of Knox Oil and Gas, as well as astronomer extraordinaire. It's amazing how the independent producers wanted Burt for the role of Happer from the very beginning, and Burt signed on immediately after reading the script, which forced 20th Century Fox to boost up the budget to afford Burt. And great move too, for even though Burt's performance is too minimal, each scene stands out with true gravitas and grace, earning him a BAFTA nomination for Best Supporting Actor, and the confirmation that Burt still had the magic of storytelling in his soul. Number 1, you better believe it, sinners, Elmer Gantry.
But as long as I got a foot, I'll kick booze. As long as I got a fist, I'll punch it. And as long as I've got a tooth, I'll bite it. And when I'm old and gray and toothless and bootless, I'll gum it till I go to heaven and booze goes to hell.
Burt Lancaster's only Academy Award winning performance for Best Actor as our big-time anti-hero Elmer Gantry, a smooth and fast-talking salesman of a reverend doctor who lives life hard with the women but is always on the go. A man of his stature has to be, so he stumbles upon Sister Sharon Falconer, played brilliantly by Gene Simmons, a traveling evangelist, and knowing just how much charity is given to the Lord, Elmer cons his way in. But the trouble is, can he keep his talent in his pants long enough to enjoy his old-time religious success and fulfill his destiny, or better yet, keep all his skeletons in the closet when he becomes an evangelist hero? Specifically, keep the skeleton of the likes of Lulu in the closet, played chillingly by Shirley Jones in her Oscar-winning performance as well. Based on the classic novel by Sinclair Lewis, which I have read and loved, this adaptation itself is one of the greatest film adaptations of a book ever put together, thanks to the brilliant mind of writer-director Richard Brooks, developing the script with Lancaster for 7 months. Sounds about right? Luckily, there weren't too many arguments of creativity between Burt and Brooks. Plus, there is absolutely no one other than Burt who could play this role, period. There were some great options like Bill Holden, Christopher Plummer, Pat Hingle, Monty Clift, and Jimmy Cagney. But Burt was the man. Now, obviously, they had to water some things down for the film adaptation, like in the book, Elmer being an actual ordained minister, but kicked out of seminary school for his heavy drinking. The Hays Code couldn't tolerate any man of the cloth being so controversial for film. But because Burt is so damn brilliant, we can see every ounce of it. This role of Elmer Gantry is a role of a lifetime for Burt that fits him like a holy glove, damn to hell.
Any punk ball player can make a slide like that. But how many folks have got the guts to play ball on God's team? And listen to this, the captain of that team is Jesus Christ himself.
Burt just purely and massively embodies an anti-hero coming into the faithful con with such a devilish smile that one is easily manipulated in being charmed by him. His poisoned apple complex that charms the robe of our Eve, Gene Simmons, is just as wild and sexy as it is so damn wrong. He gives us every chance to detest him and at the same time understand what troubles him, how he really hurts, and how he rolls with regret, which is the perfect way to play this despicable salesman three-dimensionally. The film garnered 3 Oscar wins total, but one of the most deserved wins for Best Actor ever, for he built a literary character out of truth as an attack on Billy Graham, in Burt's own words, and gave us something more to believe in. Not just the good book that he touts, but the power of dynamic storytelling.
I feel so powerful and full of love, I'm about to explode. I do explode. And then I just about love everybody.
Especially the girls.
As I look back when I was a kid and first saw Burt Lancaster, I often thought to myself, could I be like him? Could I embody his physique and intelligence? And I'd like to say Burt would answer that and say, no, be yourself, your best self. Because how he was able to inspire other artists, give them opportunities, and test their abilities is sensational. We always need artists who test themselves to make themselves better, to tell stories that really connect us all. And it can come from being a great person that Burt really was, having supported the civil rights movement, protesting against Ted Turner's plan to colorize all our favorite classic films. Yeah, that's right, Burt. And being one of the great leaders that stood up for AIDS research when it was taboo to. He was such a true artist inside and out that has done quite a lot for Hollywood, not only as an actor, but a producer and a 2-time director, giving us laughter at every turn and inspiring us all with his commitment to humanity and the craft of storytelling.
I give you the illusion of freedom. Enjoy it.
Yes, my friends, but before we sign off, tell me, do you agree with my picks? What are your favorite performances from the great movie star with brilliance, Burt Lancaster? I know some of you are totally offended and hurt that I left off some certain performances, so you still let me know in those comments. Please share in those comments. You know I always love hearing it, no matter what. If you like this, please click like, subscribe to the channel, and it would be absolutely amazing if you become a YouTube member and or a Patreon member, when each episode will have some more material that won't be copyright, for crying out loud, on top of specific movie reviews which you can vote for on either platform. Thank you all so very much for watching and supporting, and as always, keep those classics alive.
Don't be a 2-time loser, Sidney. The penalty could be severe.